Lieutenant Frank Miller never planned to make history as the first human to kill an alien. He stood at the back of the diplomatic chamber, watching Earth's ambassadors shake hands with beings that looked like they stepped out of old science fiction movies. His job was simple: protect the humans, stay alert, and try not to stare at the 7-foot-tall blue aliens with 4 arms. Remember, Captain Susan Wells had told him before they left Earth, "We're just security. Smile, nod, and keep. Your hand off your weapon." Frank followed orders. He always did. 15 years in the Terran Special Forces had taught him patience, but something felt wrong about this meeting. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council, a group of 23 species that governed this part of space. They claimed to welcome Earth into their community. Yet Frank noticed how some of them looked at the humans with what he could only describe as hunger. The Vrexians especially made him nervous. Tall, thin aliens with gray skin and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They moved too smoothly, like predators. Their translator devices turned their clicking speech into flat English. But Frank caught the dismissive tones beneath the words. "Such an honor to meet a new species," the lead Vrexian said to Ambassador Karin Young. "Humans have developed so quickly." Frank wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. The reception continued for hours. Frank's feet hurt in his dress shoes, but he maintained his position. The room was hot. Too many bodies, too many species with different temperature needs. Sweat ran down his back under his formal uniform. He first noticed something wrong when the lights flickered. Just once, barely. Noticeable. But Frank had survived 3 war zones by noticing what others missed. The Vrexian delegation suddenly moved toward the exits. All of them at once. Frank touched the communicator in his ear. "Wells East exit, Vrexians moving in formation." "Probably. Just bathroom break," Wells replied. But Frank heard the tension in her voice. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, Frank moved without thinking. He pushed Ambassador Young to the floor and covered her with his body. His hand found his sidearm, a standard-issue pistol loaded with regular bullets. No one had thought to create alien-specific ammunition yet. The emergency lights came on, bathing the room in dim red. 3 figures moved through the diplomatic crowd. Not Vrexians, something else. Smaller, faster, with masks covering their faces. Each carried a weapon that glowed blue at the tip. "Down!" Frank shouted as the first blue beam cut across the room, burning a hole through an alien diplomat's chest. The crowd panicked. Bodies pushed in all directions. The 3 attackers moved with purpose toward the human delegation. Frank pushed Ambassador Young behind a heavy table. "Stay down," he ordered. Then he did what he was trained to do. He engaged the enemy. Later, experts would analyze the security footage frame by frame. They would note that Lieutenant Frank Miller eliminated 3 armed alien assassins in 14 seconds. They would study how he moved, how he adapted instantly to non-human physiology, how he kept fighting after taking a glancing hit from an energy weapon that should have incapacitated him. But in the moment, Frank wasn't thinking about making history. He was thinking about angles and vulnerabilities. The first attacker went down with 2 bullets to what Frank hoped was its head. The second turned its weapon toward Frank, but too slowly. Frank closed the distance, twisted the weapon away, and broke what appeared to be the alien's neck with a precise strike. The third attacker was smarter. It kept its distance, firing 3 quick bursts that Frank barely dodged. The energy weapon left smoking holes in the wall behind him. Frank rolled, came up with his pistol raised, and fired his remaining bullets. 2 missed. 1 hit the attacker in what looked like a shoulder. The alien staggered but didn't fall. Frank threw his empty gun at the alien's face, causing it to flinch. That gave him the second he needed to cross the distance between them. The alien was strong, stronger than a human, should be able to fight hand to hand. But Frank had spent his life pushing human limits. The fight lasted 20 seconds. Frank took a deep cut along his ribs from some kind of blade the alien produced. He broke his own finger when he missed a punch and hit the alien's armored chest. But in the end, Frank got his arms around the alien's neck and didn't let go until it stopped moving. When Captain Wells and the security team finally secured the room, they found Frank sitting against a wall, pressing his torn jacket against his bleeding side. "You need medical," Wells said, kneeling beside him. "Ambassador?" Frank asked. "Safe. All our people are safe." Wells looked at the 3 dead aliens on the floor. What the hell were they? "Assassins," a voice said. They looked up to see a tall, purple-skinned alien looking down at them. Phyrexian Guild assassins, the best in 3 sectors. The alien seemed to study Frank with 6 dark eyes. They have never failed a contract before. 2 days later, in a medical bay on the Galactic Council station, Frank watched the news on a tablet. His face was everywhere. "Human soldier defeats alien assassins," read the headlines. The footage had spread across whatever passed for the internet. Among aliens, Captain Wells visited him with new orders. "They're creating a new unit," she said, "specifically trained for extraterrestrial threats. They want you as the first recruit." "Why me?" Frank asked. Wells showed him a message on her secure pad. It was from a galactic intelligence service. "Because the Phyrexians are the most feared mercenaries in this part of space. They've conquered 11 worlds. They're combat specialists trained for decades. And you killed 3 of them in your first fight." Frank didn't feel special. He had just done his job. "So what happens now?" "Now," Wells said, "we show the galaxy that humans aren't just diplomats. Operation Starshield begins as soon as you can stand up." Across the galaxy, a mercenary commander named Z.K. Tal watched the same footage for the 12th time. He had lived 300 cycles and led armies against the most dangerous species in known space. But something about the humans' movements disturbed him. The speed, the adaptability, the willingness to absorb injury to achieve victory. For the first time in his long career, Sktal felt something new. He felt afraid. 2 years passed since the attack on the diplomatic mission. Humans had built their first off-world military base, Proxima Station, at the edge of their solar system. It wasn't much to look at, a rotating ring of metal with living quarters, research labs, and minimal defenses. Only 40 people worked there, including 6 members of the new Starshield Special Forces Unit. Commander Eric Johnson didn't like being so far from Earth. He sat in the station's control room, drinking coffee that never tasted right in space. The sensors beeped, calling his attention to the main screen. "What is that?" he asked the young officer monitoring the system. "Unknown vessel, sir," she replied. "Big, really big." Johnson put down his coffee. "Alert status, now." Alarms rang through the station as crew members rushed to their positions. Major Frank Miller, now leader of the Starshield team on Proxima, entered the control room. He looked different than he had 2 years ago. A long scar ran down his cheek, and his eyes had the hard look of someone who had seen too much. "What do we have?" Miller asked. Johnson pointed at the screen. "Unknown ship. At least 5 times our size." The communications officer spoke up. "They're hailing us, sir." "On screen," Johnson ordered. The face that appeared wasn't human. It had scales instead of skin, with yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. "Human station," the alien said in rough English. "This is Captain Drex of the Hegemony battlecruiser Deathbringer. Your presence in this system violates Hegemony territory claims. Surrender or be destroyed." Johnson looked at Miller. "Options? We fight," Miller said simply. Johnson nodded and turned back to the screen. This is Commander Johnson of Earth's Proxima Station. We reject your claim to this system. We will not surrender. The alien captain made a sound that might have been laughter. Then you will die. But first, my soldiers want some practice with your species. The screen went dark. They're sending boarding parties, the sensor officer said. 20 life signs approaching in 3 shuttle craft. Johnson knew they couldn't win a straight fight. The station's regular security team consisted of only 10 lightly armed personnel. But he had 6 Star Shield operators, including the legendary Frank Miller. Implement Protocol Alamo, Miller said. Johnson hesitated. Protocol Alamo was a last resort. Defense strategy, named after an ancient Earth battle. It meant luring the enemy in deep and using the environment itself as a weapon. It was risky. Do it, Johnson finally ordered. All non-combat personnel to the safe room. Security team, fall back to defensive positions. Miller gathered his Star Shield team in the armory. There was Sergeant Olivia Carter, a former mountain warfare specialist with cold eyes and steady hands. Corporal Ben Harper, who could hit a target at 1,000 yards. Private Kelly Wilson, the team's explosives expert. Lieutenants John Reed and Mary Lopez completed the squad, both veterans of multiple alien encounters. They're Saurians, Miller told them as they checked their weapons. Reptilian mercenaries. They're strong, have tough skin, and can see heat signatures. They're also arrogant and think we're easy prey. Let's prove them wrong, Carter said, sliding a combat knife into her boot. The team split into pairs. Carter and Wilson took the maintenance tunnels. Reed and Lopez positioned themselves near the science labs. Miller and Harper headed for the main docking bay to slow the initial assault. The station shook as the alien shuttles attached to the outer hull. The sound of cutting torches filled the air as the Saurians forced their way inside. The aliens entered in combat formation, each nearly 7 feet tall and covered in armor. They carried energy weapons and moved with practiced precision. There, helmet cameras recorded everything, sending the feed back to their battlecruiser. The first team of Saurians moved through the seemingly empty corridors. They passed a storage room where Miller and Harper waited in the darkness. Now, Miller whispered. Harper pressed a button. All lights in the section went out. The emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. The Saurians switched to heat vision, but too late. Miller had already thrown 3 small devices into their midst. The devices exploded in blinding flashes, overloading the Saurians' sensitive eyes. Blind and confused, the aliens didn't stand a chance. Miller and Harper attacked from behind, using knives rather than guns to stay quiet. 3 Saurians fell before the others realized what was happening. Across the station, similar scenes played out. Reed and Lopez used the research lab's chemicals to create smoke that blocked the Saurians' heat vision. When the aliens entered the thick fog, the 2 humans picked them off one by one. In the maintenance tunnels, Carter and Wilson faced the worst situation. 3 Saurians cornered them in a narrow passage. Wilson took a hit from an energy weapon, the blast burning through her shoulder. Carter pushed her wounded teammate behind her and faced the advancing aliens with only her combat knife. What happened next would become legend across the galaxy. The helmet camera of the lead Saurian captured every moment. Carter moved like water, dodging energy blasts in the confined space. She used the tunnel walls to launch herself at the first alien, driving her knife into the gap between its helmet and chest armor. The second Saurian grabbed her, its clawed hand crushing her arm. Bones broke, but Carter didn't scream. Instead, she smiled through blood-streaked teeth and drove her broken arm's jagged bone into the alien's eye. The third Saurian backed away, witnessing something it couldn't understand. A small human, female, continuing to fight despite injuries that should have left her unconscious from pain. Carter advanced on the last alien, her broken arm hanging useless at her side, blood pouring from multiple wounds. The Saurian turned to flee, but Carter threw her knife with her good arm. It struck the back of the alien's neck, finding the gap in its armor. When it was over, Carter stood among the 3 dead aliens. She pulled a ceremonial blade from one of their belts and held it up to the helmet camera of the dead Saurian. "Send more any time," she said, her smile terrible to behold. On the hegemony battlecruiser, Captain Drex watched in horror as his boarding party was systematically eliminated. 20 elite Saurian mercenaries had entered the station. None returned. The footage from their helmet cameras spread quickly among the crew. Mercenaries who had fought across 100 worlds watched in silence as humans turned their own tactics against them, using the environment, fighting through injuries that should have been fatal, and showing a savagery that shocked even hardened warriors. Captain Drex made a decision. "Disengage," he ordered. "We're leaving." His second-in-command looked shocked. "But the humans are not worth dying for," Drex finished. "No one told us they fight like this." As the battlecruiser retreated, the footage from the Saurians' cameras was already being transmitted across hegemony space. Soon, it would reach every mercenary guild in the sector, and applications to Earth's Starshield program would increase tenfold. The hegemony leaders could not accept their defeat at Proxima Station. Their reputation had suffered throughout the galaxy. They needed to show their strength and teach the humans a lesson. 3 months after the Proxima incident, they launched a full attack on Tau Ceti, humanity's most distant colony. Tau Ceti was a small settlement. Only 5,000 humans lived there, mostly farmers and miners who wanted a fresh start far from Earth. The planet had rich soil, but stronger gravity than Earth. The colonists had grown stronger muscles just by living there. Colonel Greg Martinez stood on a hill overlooking the colony's main town. Through binoculars, he watched the hegemony ships land in the distance. There were at least 20 of them, each carrying 100 soldiers. The math was simple and bad. The aliens outnumbered his defenders by at least 10 to 1. "They're here." "In force," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Davis. 2,000 troops, maybe more. Martinez nodded. "And we have what?" 100 colonial defense forces and 30 Starshield operators. "Yes, sir, but we have something they don't." "What's that?" Davis smiled. "We're fighting on our turf. And we're human." Martinez had received a message from Earth Command the day before. No reinforcements would arrive in time. They were on their own. But his orders were clear. Defend the colony at all costs. Show the galaxy that humans would not surrender their territory. "Implement Forest Ghost Protocol," Martinez ordered. "No fixed positions. No conventional defense. We hit them where they don't expect us, when they don't expect us." Davis nodded and went to brief the troops. Martinez stayed on the hill a moment longer, thinking about what they faced. The hegemony had hired the Kronos Legion, the most feared mercenary force in 3 sectors. They consisted of multiple alien species, each chosen for specific combat skills. And they were led by Z.K. Tal, the veteran commander who had studied humans since first contact. Martinez knew Z.K. Tal would be prepared. But being prepared for humans on paper was very different from facing them in combat. That night, the human defenders vanished into the forests surrounding the colony. They took their weapons, supplies, and nothing else. The colonists were evacuated to caves in the northern mountains. When the hegemony forces marched into the main settlement the next morning, they found it empty. "They ran," said Krell, a massive 4-armed alien who served as Z.K. Tal's lieutenant. E.K. Tal wasn't convinced. "No, they're adapting. Spread out search teams. Find them." The search teams never returned. Over the next week, hegemony soldiers reported seeing shadows moving through the trees. Sentries disappeared from their posts. Supply depots were raided. The aliens began to grow nervous, jumping at every sound in the unfamiliar forests. The higher gravity of Tau Ceti affected the alien troops. They tired quickly, while the humans who had lived there were used to it. Martinez used this advantage. He ordered his forces to attack at night, when most alien species had poorer vision than humans. On the 10th day, a magnetic storm hit the region. These storms were common on Tau Ceti, disrupting electronics and communications. The hegemony forces huddled in their forward base, waiting for it to pass. Stahl doubled the guards, but the storm reduced visibility to just a few feet. Lieutenant Davis led a 5-person Starshield team through the storm. They wore simple cloth over their faces to breathe in the heavy winds. The alien guards never saw them coming. Davis and his team moved through the base like ghosts, eliminating sentries with silenced weapons. They reached the weapons depot where the hegemony stored their advanced technology. Davis had memorized alien weapon designs during his training. He knew which ones would be most valuable. "Take everything we can carry," he told his team. "Focus on the plasma rifles and shield generators." They filled their packs with alien technology and vanished back into the storm before reinforcements arrived. By the time Z.K. Tal realized what had happened, the humans were gone. 3 days later, the hegemony troops were shocked to find themselves under attack by their own weapons. Human soldiers wielded modified plasma rifles, adjusted to work with human hands. The Starshield engineers had reverse-engineered the alien technology in just days. "Impossible," Krell said as reports came in. "It takes our engineers months to adapt technology between species." As Tal watched the casualty reports grow, "They don't think like us. They don't fight like a civilized species. They adapt too quickly." After 3 months of fighting, the hegemony forces had suffered severe losses. The mercenary companies began to question their contracts, something unheard of in their profession. Tal intercepted communications between mercenary captains. "These humans don't fight like a civilization should. They fight like they evolved specifically for war. Did you see what they did to Alpha Squad? They rigged the trees with traps. The trees. My company has lost 30% strength. No amount of payment is worth this." Z.K. Tal knew the campaign was lost. The humans refused to meet them in open battle, where superior numbers would win. Instead, they struck from shadows, used the environment as a weapon, and adapted alien technology against its makers. He made the difficult decision to withdraw his remaining forces. In his final report to Hegemony Command, he wrote, "The humans adapt too quickly. They see our technology once and improve it the next day. They study our tactics and develop counters overnight. Most disturbing is their attitude toward combat. Where other species fight because they must, humans almost seem to enjoy the challenge. They are not a species that can be conquered through conventional means, only contained." As the last hegemony ships left Tau Ceti, Colonel Martinez stood, again on the same hill where he had first watched them arrive. Lieutenant Davis joined him, his uniform torn and dirty from months in the field. "We did it," Davis said. "We held," Martinez nodded. "This time, they'll be back, though. Will they? Word is the mercenaries are breaking contracts rather than face us again. Is that right?" Martinez allowed himself a small smile. "Then we've won something more valuable than a battle. We've won respect." Across the galaxy, the story of Tau Ceti spread. How a small human force had defeated the mighty Kronos Legion. How the feared mercenary companies had broken their sacred contracts rather than continue fighting humans. The hegemony publicly claimed they had withdrawn for strategic reasons. But everyone knew the truth. They had found an enemy they couldn't defeat through strength alone, and the legend of human special forces grew. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Tau Ceti. Humanity had grown stronger in the galaxy. Earth ships traveled between stars. Human colonies spread to new planets. The Starshield program had expanded, with special forces operators now stationed on every human world. The hegemony had not forgotten their defeats. Unable to win through direct warfare, they turned to other methods. They placed enormous bounties on captured human special forces operators, alive for study. The price for a single Starshield soldier was enough to buy a small Moon Dot Major. Samantha Lee sat in the control room of Research Outpost Europa 2, reviewing security reports. The outpost was humanity's newest scientific base, built to study a strange alien ruin discovered on this distant moon. 30 scientists worked here, protected by Lee's Starshield team. Known as Echo Squad, Lee was a veteran of 3 alien engagements. A scar ran across her neck where a hegemony soldier had nearly killed her 2 years ago. She survived, and the alien didn't. That was the way of things now. "Major, we've got movement on the perimeter sensors," said Corporal Steve Jenkins, the team's sensor specialist. "Multiple signatures, Sector 7. Lee frowned. "Could be local wildlife, moving too deliberately, ma'am." "These are intelligent beings." Lee activated the outpost's alert system. Yellow lights flashed, warning the scientists to move to secure areas. She gathered her team in the armory, 6 Starshield operators, the best Earth had to offer. "Gear up," she ordered. "Unknown contacts approaching from the North Ridge. Could be curious locals. Could be trouble." The team checked their weapons and armor. They had learned to prepare for anything. Sergeant Pat Cooper, "You're with me." Lee said, "We'll check the ridge. The rest of you secure the perimeter. No one gets close to the scientists." Cooper nodded. He was the team's sniper, with eyes that could spot a target a mile away. They moved out into the alien twilight. Europa 2 had no real day or night, just endless purple dusk as light filtered through the gas giant this moon orbited. They reached a good vantage point and scanned the ridge with binoculars. Cooper spotted them first. "Major," he whispered, 9 o'clock. Those aren't locals." Lee looked where he pointed. Her blood ran cold. Moving between the alien rocks were figures she recognized, mercenaries, but not just any mercenaries. She saw the distinctive armor of a manted hunter, the four-armed bulk of a Krell warrior, the shimmering outline of a phantom assassin. "This is a hit squad," she said quietly. "The best of the best." Cooper's face paled. "Why would they send their top people against us? We're just guarding scientists." Lee was already calling the rest of her team. "Because they want us. The bounty. Fall back to the outpost, now." They moved quickly, but carefully. Lee knew the mercenaries would have the area surrounded. Her mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, planning defenses. When they reached the outpost, Lee ordered a full lockdown. Blast doors sealed, defense systems activated. She gathered her team for a briefing. "We're facing at least 8 different mercenary species out there," she told them. Led by Vikrolak, the name sent a chill through the room. Vikrolak was a legendary manted hunter who had claimed bounties on targets from 1,000 worlds. His chitinous green armor and 4 compound eyes had starred in the nightmares of soldiers across the galaxy. "How do you know it's him?" asked Private Linda Gray, the team's youngest member. "I recognized his armor pattern," Lee said. "I studied all major threat files. He never fails to collect his bounty." "Well, he's about to fail for the first time," said Lieutenant Dan Foster, loading his rifle with grim determination. Before Lee could respond, the outpost's communication system activated. A voice clicked and hissed, translated by the computer into flat English. "Human soldiers. This is V.K. Relak of the Manted Hunters Guild. We have captured one of your scientists who is outside your perimeter. Surrender yourselves and the civilian lives. Resist, and we will return pieces of him until you comply." The screen showed Dr. Alan Reed, a geologist who must have been taking samples outside when the mercenaries arrived. He looked terrified, but unharmed. Lee's team looked to her for orders. She knew what the mercenaries wanted: Starshield operators alive to study, to learn how humans fought, how they thought. The bounty specified live capture. She keyed the communication system. "This is Major Samantha Lee, Starshield Team Echo. You have one chance. Release our scientist and leave this moon. You have my word you'll be allowed to depart unharmed." Clicking laughter answered her. "You misunderstand the situation, human. You are surrounded by the finest hunters in the galaxy. Your defenses are already compromised. Surrender now." Lee switched off the communication. She turned to her team. "They don't understand who they're dealing with. They think we'll surrender to save a civilian. They're about to learn how wrong they are." She keyed the system again. "Vekrilak, listen carefully. We're coming for our people. Surrender now, and you'll receive medical treatment before imprisonment. Resist, and there won't be enough of you left to identify." The mercenaries cut the communication. Lee turned to her team. They've made their choice. Now they face Starshield. Over the next 36 hours, the mercenaries learned why human special forces had become legendary. Lee's team used the outpost systems in ways the aliens never expected. They vented superheated steam from research equipment into corridors, where mercenaries tried to breach. They rigged scientific instruments to create electromagnetic pulses that disabled alien weapons. When 3 Phantom assassins managed to infiltrate the East Wing, Sergeant Cooper rigged the gravity controls too. Increase pull to 3 times normal. The Phantoms, used to moving in standard gravity, could barely stand. Cooper, who had trained in high-gravity environments, moved among them like they were standing still. Lieutenant Foster led a counterattack through the outpost's maintenance tunnels, emerging behind the mercenaries' position. He captured their communication equipment and used it to feed false information to separated teams, leading them into prepared ambushes. Private Gray proved especially resourceful. When cornered by a massive Krell warrior, she used a fire suppression system to fill the room with foam that hardened on contact with air. The Krell, with its 4 arms and bulky frame, was trapped like an insect in amber. By the second day, the young mercenaries were in disarray. Their carefully planned operation had fallen apart against enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. They had expected professional soldiers. What they found were nightmare opponents who turned the very environment into a weapon. When Lee's team finally rescued Dr. Reed, they found him unharmed but shaken. The scientist looked at his rescuers with new respect. "They were so sure you would surrender," he told Lee. "They didn't understand." "No," Lee agreed, "they didn't." In the end, only Vekrilak himself survived. Lee captured the manted hunter as he tried to escape to his ship. She made sure his communication system was intact before sending him back to his guild. "Take a message to whoever sent you," she told the defeated alien. "Humans aren't seeking war, but we're very, very good at it. Don't make us demonstrate further." The bounty program was quietly discontinued after VK Relak's report spread through mercenary channels. The cost had become too high. No payment was worth facing Starshield. 10 years had passed since humans first met aliens. In that decade, humanity had gone from newcomers to a respected and feared power in galactic politics. Human ships traveled between stars. Human goods were traded in alien markets. And human special forces had gained a reputation that made even veteran warriors nervous. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 23 spacefaring species gathered in the Great Chamber. the topic that brought them together, the human problem. Admiral Julie Bennett arrived as Earth's representative. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations, though she had earned many in her career. At her side stood Captain Nick Rivera, a veteran Starshield operator who had fought at both Proxima Station and Tau Ceti. His presence alone caused visible discomfort among the alien security forces. The Council recognizes the representative from Earth, announced the Cherbing, a tall blue alien with 6 arms. Bennett stepped forward. Thank you for inviting us to this discussion. Earth wishes to maintain peaceful relations with all species. A reptilian delegate hissed. Peaceful? Your special forces have disrupted the balance of power across 3 sectors. Bennett remained calm. We have only defended our territory and our people. We have never initiated conflict. The issue is not who started these conflicts, said another delegate, a floating cloud of gas contained in a transparent suit. The issue is their economic impact. Reports from across the galaxy showed the problem. Mercenary companies were refusing contracts that might put them against human forces. Insurance rates for operations near human space had increased tenfold. Trade routes were being rerouted to avoid human systems, adding costs and delays. This cannot continue, said the gas being. The stability of galactic commerce depends on predictable security arrangements. Bennett listened as the delegates argued. Some wanted restrictions placed on human expansion. Others suggested requiring Earth to disband its Starshield program. A few even called for quarantining the human species to their home system. After hours of debate, a new figure entered the chamber. Tall and gray-skinned, with eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Bennett recognized him immediately. Z-Katal, the legendary commander who had faced humans at Tau Ceti. He had since become head of the Mercenary Guild Alliance, the largest organization of professional soldiers in the galaxy. The Council recognizes Guildmaster Z.K. Tal, the Cherbing announced. C-Tal moved to the center of the chamber. His voice was deep and carried authority earned in countless battles. I have fought humans, he said simply. Many here have not. You do not understand what you are proposing. The chamber went quiet. Even the most vocal anti-human delegates respected Z.K. Tal's experience. Restricting humans will not work. Threatening them will only make them more dangerous. I propose a different solution, the Mercenary Accords. He explained his unprecedented proposal. The Mercenary Guild Alliance would formally agree not to accept contracts against human special forces. In return, Earth would limit Starshield deployments to defensive operations and provide training exchanges with Guild representatives. This is outrageous, shouted the reptilian delegate. You would give human special status? Kal turned his mirrored eyes to the reptile. I would recognize reality. Would you prefer to send your soldiers to die pointlessly? I have done so. I will not do it again. The council chambers erupted in argument. Bennett watched carefully. Saying nothing, Captain Rivera leaned close to her ear. They're afraid, he whispered. They should be, she replied quietly. After much debate, the council agreed to consider Z.K. Tal's proposal. A recess was called. Bennett found herself in a private chamber with Z, Catal, and Rivera. For a long moment, the alien commander simply studied the human captain. You fought at Tau Ceti, Z.K. Tal finally said. Rivera nodded. I was there. I lost 800 soldiers. We lost 17. Sktal made a sound that might have been a sigh. I have commanded armies for 3 centuries. I have fought species from 100 worlds. But I have never encountered anything like humans. He turned to Bennett. Do you know why I proposed the Accords? Not for politics, not for commerce, but because mercenaries who fight for payment will always break before soldiers who fight for belief. And humans believe in their cause with a fervor I have never seen. Sktal hesitated, then asked the question that had haunted him for years. Your species was fighting itself for thousands of years before reaching space. How did you become so effective? Rivera exchanged a glance with Bennett, who nodded for him to answer. Because we spent millennia trying to kill each other, Rivera said. We got really good at staying alive. What you see as extraordinary, we see as Tuesday. The difference between us isn't technology or strength. It's that you fight because you're ordered to. We fight because our entire evolutionary history prepared us for it. The alien commander was silent for a long moment. That, he finally said, is why I will not send mercenaries against you again. 3 days later, the mercenary accords were signed. Human special forces were officially recognized as a strategic power on par with entire alien battle fleets. Mercenary companies throughout the galaxy added a new clause to their contracts: null and void if Starshield involvement is confirmed. As Bennett and Rivera prepared to return to Earth, they watched the news broadcasts spreading across galactic networks. Humanity had gained a new title in galactic politics. The species too troublesome to fight. Do you think it will last? Rivera asked as their ship prepared to depart. Bennett looked out at the stars. Peace through strength is an old human concept. It will last as long as they remember what happens when they test us. And if they forget, she smiled, then Starshield will remind them. Across the galaxy, in bars and battleships, mercenaries told stories about humans. How they fought through injuries that should kill them. How they adapted enemy technology overnight. How they turned environments into weapons. But the most repeated story was about a simple question asked by a young mercenary recruit. Why don't we fight the humans? The veteran's answer became a warning passed from species to species. Because they don't just fight to win. They fight to survive. And nothing in the galaxy is more dangerous than a human who refuses to die.